Hi, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. My name is Abhishek. I'm here with Azan. Our third teammate, Mariana, couldn't be with us today. But yeah, we're here to present what we did during this hackathon and what we came up with in the form of Project Wellness. Next slide, please. So here's a quick overview of what this presentation is going to be like. First, I'll take you through the problem statement and how we decided to come up with what kind of idea we came up with. Then I'll take you to cleaning and what kind of decisions we made in terms of the data we need. Then Azan and I will go through our conclusions in the form of data visualizations and the insights we learned from those visualizations. Finally, Azan will take you through the prototype of our application that we built. All right, moving on. Okay, so our problem statement. It should be no surprise to anyone that the past year has been an unprecedented time filled with economic uncertainty, housing and food scarcity, political unrest, and so many more events that are prone to cause mental health problems such as depression and anxiety. With this in mind, my team and I decided to use data and data analysis to see if we could find a link between social media posts and poor mental health indicators. And with this kind of relationship, we wanted to build an application that would provide people with an opportunity to get help for problems such as depression or anxiety in order to make it through this pandemic safely. Okay, going forward. So in order to do that, we needed a lot of data. Obviously, we had the data set given to us by the hackathon, which included things like the country, lots of social media posts and sentiment. But we also needed mental health data. So we appended a data suicide rate and depression. And we also appended a data set of WHO COVID-19 data in order to see cases and deaths by country. This wasn't the end of our data, however. We also had to do a lot of cleaning. For example, we found that out of all the posts we had, the majority of them were from a single day. And similarly, we had to remove certain columns and change the data type of other columns in order to more easily perform analysis, which I'll show you later on. Okay, moving forward. Okay, so we start out with exploration, a broad exploration of all of the variables in our data set, and just to see what kind of relationships are there. From there, we decided to focus on certain variables, such as tone and the country, and we looked for correlations with other variables, such as the mental illness indicators or the number of cases. We spent a lot of time focusing on the sentiment of various posts because we felt that that would give us a good insight into connecting social media and poor mental health. We plotted everything geospatially in order to see how it fits on the world map and to see if there's any sort of geographic relationship between certain variables. We looked at the proportions of our data set in order to see if we had a representative sample of the world's population and to see what kind of assumptions we could accurately make. All right, next slide.
Abhishek, your video is lagging a bit. You wanna
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think everything was frozen for a second. Do you guys, are you guys able to hear me fine?
You're good now.
Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, so here's some of the data visualizations that we made. Starting off in the top left, you'll see this double donut chart that shows the posts by region and by source type. What we noticed is that the Americas and Europe constitute nearly all of the posts in this data set, whereas the Eastern Mediterranean and Africa have very, very few posts between them. On the inner ring, which is the source type, we can see that as things like web posts and blogs are very little of the data we have. And this kind of shaped the way we looked at it. Obviously, we can't make assumptions about regions we don't have data from. And so we were very careful about not making broad assumptions that weren't backed up by our data set. Now, going on to the top left, you'll see a bar chart that shows the total number of posts by sentiment by source type. And this chart really surprised me because contrary to what many people believe, it seems that positive posts outnumber negative posts on nearly every media, except for news. And I think that this might be because the news has to report on all sorts of tragedy, add to the total number of negative posts. And surprisingly, it seems that neutral posts tend to dominate everywhere except for in web articles. Finally, at the bottom, you'll see a long bar chart. And this is the average tone per country. And this factors in the fact that certain countries have very, very few posts. And it removes countries that would skew the results. And what we found was that countries like Russia and Ecuador seem to be very negative in general, whereas countries like Japan and Brazil and the Faroe Islands seem to be very positive. Originally, we had thought that the amount of negative posts would be a good indicator for poor mental health, as those two things intuitively seem to go together. However, we found something quite different to share with you right now in the next slide. Okay, so in this slide, we have a heat map. And this is a heat map that our teammate Mariana made. And normally she would explain this, but I'm going to do my best to fill in for her. Basically, this heat map explores the correlation between various variables in our data set. And we wanted to see a strong positive correlation between negative sentiment and things like depression and suicide rate, something like that. But instead, we found a positive correlation between positive sentiment and depression, which was unexpected. And granted, we have to take this with a grain of salt because our mental illness indicators are from 2018 because there's no data published for 2020 at the time of our project. However, it is interesting to note that the relationship isn't what we seemed. And I think this highlights the importance of this sort of data analysis in creating our product. Moving on.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. Now, I'll be talking a little more on what our teammate Mariana found in the data set. She was very integral. And another thing that she utilized is a word cloud, which showed all the similar themes that we could find from all the data we had coming from Twitter, Instagram, the news, and all the sources. And we found that, as expected, the common words and phrases are obviously the biggest, such as COVID-19, anything to do with politics, and anything to do with the vaccine. But the smaller words and phrases that we saw showed more about people's mental states, such as there was a lot of times where we saw tirelessly working or slaving away or feeling like a slave or pay raise or things that are generally associated with someone struggling and someone who has mental issues. So with that being said, we wanted to look more into how we can see this data geographically. So we looked at the geospatial analysis, and now that we do know that positive tone is linked with higher depression, we wanted to utilize the WHO global data that we appended before so we can see how deaths are linked to the tone of posts. And with our geospatial analysis, we actually found that the countries with a higher average tone, like Brazil, Japan, Mexico, and Italy, were actually found to have a higher average of deaths, which is very interesting. Especially most of Europe had a positive tone, especially Italy. Especially Italy had a high tone, but it was known for its coronavirus outbreak. And this is a very confusing thing to us because it had a higher tone than countries like China and Australia, which were countries that actually didn't have many deaths. This confirmed our suspicions that countries that appear to have a higher tone are actually more in need of mental health awareness. And therefore, our next step as a business would be to target these countries. So for our app interface, our prototype is a mobile app called Project Wellness. It has a simple design that can be used by any age range or by medical professionals, and it will have a main page, which is simple and leads to 4 other directories. I will show it to you real quick. So this is our main page for our application. This is supposed to represent a phone, like a Galaxy. So this is our user interface first page, and the first section we go to is global news about mental health. And this is basically mental health news around the world. This is useful for any users who in general want to know more about mental health or don't really know what's going on in the space, because some people feel that it's not very relatable and they don't know that this many people are experiencing the same problems that they do have. Now, the second section is visualizations. This could be used for medical professionals or just general users who like to see visualizations and statistics, such as the average tone of posts in each region, as well as the word cloud we showed you before on what most people around the world are talking about in terms of mental health on social media platforms. The purpose of this is to also keep the user updated on what is happening globally. Our next section in the application would be a global heat map. And this is turning your phone landscape. Looking at this image, this is supposed to show interactive dashboards on different things that a user can see that will benefit them in their health life, such as average tone by country and source type. This view is useful because sources like Twitter or in China and other countries, allegedly they have biased social media. So you can filter out those social medias so you can see the social medias or news sites that are less biased, and you can see how positive or negative your country is in terms of that. And another dashboard would be transmission indicators and how it happens in each country. So let's say in your country, supermarkets are a very hot spot for COVID. You can avoid these, and these are just overall to help the user. And our most important section that most aligns with what we're trying to say is our Find Wellness Near You directory of the application, which will show a suicide hotline or whatever is most popular in terms of a mental issue. Like in the United States, if it's depression, we could have a depression hotline or a different resource on top, and these will be um, color coded. Like pink is for mental health in terms of the plus, it's a mental health, and red is for hospitals. In our fully fledged application, we would include a backend feature causing issues that exist more strongly in certain parts of the globe to be recommended to users who live there. And that is basically our presentation. We are Project Wellness, and we hope for a healthier future. Thank you for listening.